back up to go look at. And if you go to it'll be posted on YouTube this afternoon. Can you see the screen of submission history?
Yes.
Okay. It will be posted on YouTube this afternoon, and you can look it up under Virginia Pitts, and I have a TCU Horned Frog emblem. And there's 3 videos there will be 3 videos there that you can look at, either any of them. 2 of them are launches, and this one will be kind of a going over of some of the things you can do. So doing the submissions, I actually did a couple for you, and I found that there are a lot of different areas that you can combine when you go in to observe a class. And I don't know whether you'll go in as a one-on-one with a teacher, or if you will watch videos of teachers teaching, or if you will videotape yourself. But whatever you do, you can combine many of the indicators with your video that you're doing or that you're watching, or if you're just observing the teacher. Now remember that when you do the observation, you can talk about it among yourself, but remember to come back and fill out your submission individually, because we want a reflection of what you thought of what went on in the classroom. And hopefully it's you that you're videotaping, and that you can see what you can better yourself doing as a teacher. But what I found, and let me move this, see if I can move this out of the way. What I found is these are all the indicators that we have. There's all 38 of them. Well, looking at the first indicator, which is safe and accessibility in the classroom, this is a very difficult one for a lot of people, because we want the classroom safe for the child, but we want it accessible for all the supplies, and so that students can interact with one another. So you can combine the physical space along with the safe and accessibility to the student interactions, because once they get their supplies and the classroom is safe, you can go ahead and fill out the indicator for number 2 with it. If there is interaction, say they're working on something at a table and they're doing a lab, well, the person has gone and had accessibility to all the supplies, or maybe the teacher put the tray on the table and they have the accessibility. Then once that happens and they start collaborating and working together in a lab, then you have student-to-student interactions where they're working together. And so there's 2 indicators right there out of one observation. If you're doing the physical space, as safe and accessibility, or student interactions. It might also be that you're doing classroom routines and procedures, where you were in there at the beginning of the class, you saw how the class came in, they had certain routines and procedures that they did as the class began. Maybe there was a bell ringer at the beginning when they walked in. Maybe they automatically walked in, put their backpacks up, and then walked over and picked up their notebooks that they leave in the classroom and went back to their class, went back to their desk or their table, and started writing the bell ringer, or writing down whatever the assignment for the day was. So there you could possibly even have 3 out of one observation. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Nope.
Okay. So that's a possibility. With student-teacher interactions, and I'm not going to go through all 38 of these, but student-teacher interactions, not only could you, when the student is interacting, when the teacher is interacting with the student, there's all kinds of areas that you could go to. Maybe you're interacting with questioning. Well, then you might find out there's some misconceptions. So along with questioning with the students and the student-teacher interaction, which sometimes is more about behavior than it is questioning, but you could see if the behavior is not good because the student is not understanding, then you've got misconceptions, you've got questioning, and you've got the student-teacher interaction. So you can look at your evidence documents and see exactly what is needed for each one of those and reflect on them. Look at, look at the different maps here when you look at the curriculum and the content page to see what is necessary for that indicator. So you're combining maybe two. Now, some of them may not be, you can't combine. You'll just have to, excuse me, you'll just have to do one on itself. But the one that I actually worked up was an engineering design process. And so you have to choose a real world scenario. And I didn't add that to this ball game until this morning, where you take a real world scenario and decide to do an engineering process. Excuse me, we have sinus down here in Texas. And so you talk, you have collaboration with your group, with your class on a real world scenario. And the one I chose is a hurricane. There's no electricity. There's no way to filter the water that you could drink. So then I went to let's see, let me open this. Then I went to the area of response to failure and intellectual risk taking. Well, when they have to start working on things and providing information, they sometimes don't like to say it out loud because they don't know how it's going to be taken if they fail. And sometimes teachers do not word their wording when they tell a student that they're wrong in the correct way, and so it shuts that student down. So this is how when I did mine, this is my data information, and I wrote about it, and I told them that it was a real world situation with a hurricane, and the teacher discusses to the students about the situation, and she actually chose this, and so there wasn't any brainstorming going on, which is one of the things she could have done better. And then they go through and they talk about what they could do. And then down here, and I can't upload because I'm a fake student on these that I get to use. Down here, the students are beginning to get frustrated because as they're working on their engineering design, or as they're working on getting the engineering protocol done and what they want to find out, they're getting frustrated because they don't know exactly how they want this to work. And so she has to come around and say things like, that really looks good. Why don't you collaborate a little bit more and see if you can come up with a different filter, or collaborate some more ideas on how maybe you could use the materials that are here. So it was encouraging to them that it was okay that they were frustrated, but that's how you learn, is through frustration. It's okay if that filter didn't work. Let's try another material, because remember, we learn from when we don't always get it right. One of the things I gave an example is that she told the class they might have to hurry because the bell was getting ready to ring. Well, that made a lot of kids anxious. So she probably could have said, finish up what you're doing right now, and we'll come back to this tomorrow because class is getting ready to be over. But finish up what you've got, because you'll have time to finish tomorrow. And then I wrote down some recommendations that, her wording could have been a little bit different when she talked about hurrying up. She did give good ideas on calming their frustration. And I think that every teacher should make it clear that without failure and risks, that we won't move forward in our learning. If it wasn't for the failures that they did in the space industry, we would never be having a space station. We never would have gone to the moon. We would have never be able to send the Hubble telescope out. We would never be able to do so many things because we have to learn from our failure. But it's the tone of the voice and how the teacher makes the student feel when they respond to failure. So this was because they're working on an engineering design project. this was some of their ideas, and they were getting frustrated, and so they were having to learn that it's okay to fail. And then I went to, let me get to my submissions again. Then I went to the identifying the engineering, and I'm not getting this. Need to open it up. Let me move everything over to one side so I can open it up. So then they have to start defining everything, and so that now you're doing the actual engineering, you're identifying the engineering problems, which you've really already done. I kind of did the failure first. So you've defined it, so now you're going to work on it. And again, I didn't upload anything. I used the same data than I did on the other one because it's all combined together. And then I went down and put some more examples in. She presents the problem through a video of a hurricane and shows all the flooding and all the things. And she went on, and some of the materials that she gave, that they could use. Then they would come down, and then for the suggestion, the teacher can, of course, introduce limitations, but she needs to let the kids actually brainstorm first and decide what they wanted to do. She doesn't need to give a step-by-step advice on how to do an EDP. She can have it on a poster on the side of the wall, so they can know what the steps of an EDP are. But you can, because of doing these, you got indicator 6 involved and the real world, which is indicator 12. And then finally they do their EDPs, which, I won't go through that, but that is their final part. So now you have 4 indicators that you have used with one observation. You could also use real world and response to failure with a PBL. And our project-based learning, they have to produce a product at the end, which could be a pamphlet, a PowerPoint, a gallery walk, a diorama, a museum setting. But you could use all of those because PBLs are supposed to be real-world scenarios, and their project or their product that they might not be quite what it should be, so they have to go back and restart what they were. So that is a response to failure that the teacher will have to deal with the students with. And so you could use those with a PBL. So there's another 3 or 4 in one observation. Are you getting where I'm coming from, that you could use multiple observations for more than one indicator?
Yes.
Okay. Sometimes, and one of the things I also bring up is not only, I don't know if all of you are science teachers or if all of you, and I don't know if your whole school is doing this because I'm the coach and I'm not launching anything, but you can bring all your other curriculum into this. I mean, you can bring the English teacher in, you can bring to do a PBL, and your science teacher can work collaboratively together. You can do so many of these things together, and so it will help them to be able to go through and do one observation and 2 or 3 indicators at one time. One of the things that I had a candidate do the other day, it was the reading in science and writing in science. They combined the 2 together. So as they were reading, one of their strategies was to draw pictures of the definitions that were in the reading process. And then and that also works with the non-linguistic. So they had 3 indicators right there. So they read with the different strategies. They got to pick their own book or booklet or video that they wanted to watch on whatever the subject was. They wrote information kind of like a scientist, but they also added something that came home to them where they could draw pictures. Maybe they're more of a visual person. So they drew a picture to help with what they just read. So there again, you have 3 indicators right there. You have 23, 24, and 26. So you have 3 indicators. You can utilize your time, that way. So with all 38 indicators, I've given you 4 examples, and you've already probably done 10 or 12 indicators that would help you. So you're not spending from now until next, May trying to finish these up. Now beware that you can talk to each other about these, but they're all your own submissions and reflections. If you have to use our video library, or if you have to go to YouTube, that's fine too. It's best that you can do your own, or you videotape your own, or if you get permission from a teacher to come in and watch their teaching, that's great too. I don't know how helpful this is, if there is any more questions that you need, but I just find that if you go through and look, a lot of these indicators can be combined to utilize your time better.
We have a question.
Okay.
If you are combining, if you're doing 3 indicators with 1 observation, do you do 1 submission, or do you copy and paste your notes for each indicator?
Okay, that's a great question, and I didn't cover it. You have to submit for each indicator. So if you're doing like the one I gave on the real world connections, which is 12, and failure of response, which is 6, and then 30 and 31, which were the EDPs, you would have 4 submissions. You can copy and paste the data, but you're going to have to prove evidence that supports each one of those indicators. So the failure is not going to support the real world connections. You've got to be able to support with evidence from each one of those. So if you're having failure and the teacher said something like, well, that was a stupid remark, that would probably not be a role model teacher. I mean, it wouldn't be. But that wouldn't fit into the real world. Like, your evidence there is a hurricane just occurred in Florida and they have no electricity and no running water. How would you be able to filter the water? And so you have to have evidence to show that it's real world, that the students understood it was real world, and you have to give documentation with it being a real world. So you would have 4 indicators and 4 evidence documents. But you only have to...
Virginia, I'm going to step in just for a minute because I want to summarize it for my understanding, in hopes that my regurgitation of what you said is helpful to others. So the time savings comes in the fact that I can make 1 observation of a video and use the data from that 1 observation, but ultimately the reflection for the multiple indicators that are seen in that observation are unique and different. So the time savings is because I'm only having to make 1 observation. The data is potentially the same for the 2, 3, or 4 indicators, but then I have to write an individual reflection for each of those indicators, correct?
Correct. And it sounds like, well, I don't know if I'm really saving any time, but you are, because you look at each one of these indicators and it might take you the first one to get all the data down that you need. It might take you, 10 or 15 minutes. But if you had to do 4 different observations and you only have to stand there 20 minutes, that's 80 minutes already. I'm going to tell you, you're not going to spend 80 minutes doing 4 different indicators, because the evidence document has to be complete, but some of the evidence will be from, it's the same observation, you just have to critique it to make it fit the specific indicator.
So Virginia, can I jump in real quick? Can we
Right.
do a litmus test and a question session with Lindsay and the group? Does that clarify things? Does that help things? Does that lead to new questions?
Are there any new questions? Does that make sense? Okay, we're good.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'm pretty much that was my role, is to help you see how you could do one observation and do several. Now, I wouldn't try to do, like 6 or 7 out of indicators out of one observation. You're pushing it for the 4, but because the example I gave you was a real world situation, then you could do that. The PBL automatically has to have an authentic question with it. And so that's usually a real world scenario, not something that happened back in 1800s. So that scenario goes on, and you're going to plan your PBL and you're going to end up with a product. So you have the real world scenario, the authentic question, and then you have your actual PBL. So 2 or 3 is best, but I found that the failure to response was good with the EDP, because so many times when you're actually building something or when you're doing a prototype, there is failure. Or even when you're planning something, oh, I can't use nylon. That's not going to filter anything. The nylon holes are too big. What could I use? Could I use cheesecloth, or could I use cotton material where the holes are very small to filter something? So, that would work with failure, even with the EDP, and so with the real world. Craig? I'm pretty much, that's that's pretty much what I worked out to show them.
Lindsay, how's the group feeling? Is this helpful?
They're saying yes.
Okay.
If you have any other questions? How many of you, or have any of you done the survey? Except for, well, you did it if you're done already. Okay, Craig, can you kind of go over the survey? Would you mind?
And everybody has that link, correct, Lindsay?
It's on the PD document, isn't it? The PD document that I sent you. Sorry, this isn't my computer.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Virginia, can you stop sharing, then I'll take over?
Okay, we have the link. We're just all attempting to get there right now.
Okay, that's fine. And I'm going to just pull it up, and it should be on the screen now. So it looks like already there are 26 responses for this survey. Do you know how many people that went out to, Lindsay?
This went out to just our group, so I'm not sure where who is responding to it.
We don't. So this survey is for the campus survey. So would that have gone out to all of your teachers?
It looks like it, yes.
Okay. And what would that total number probably have been?
Total teachers?
Yes. Just ballpark.
60.
Okay. So remember that this survey is tied to campus certification, not the individual teacher certification. And this one here is 16 question open response. Doesn't have to be complete sentences. It can be phrases. But the idea is we are trying to collect teachers' understanding of STEM current reality at the campus level. So
Okay.
as people go through this, what we have typically seen and heard is that with the 16 questions, typically you're looking at 20 to 30 minutes on a completion, depending on the length of response that staff are providing. Once we get the data from the group, and we may not get all 60 responses, but it looks like we're at least going to get 50%, probably more, then Lucia and I will begin to analyze the data, and then we'll meet with Lindsay and Ian and begin to look at some trends. And this here really supports us in identifying some actions that we'll put in our year-long action plan. So this is really background data to point us in the right direction. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So are staff working on this as well today, or do we have a cutoff date? Okay. And Lindsay, what was the projected date that you guys wanted to have everybody done with that? Was that end of today, or is that next week sometime? I just not recalling.
With the survey?
Correct.
We're aiming to have it done today.
Okay, wonderful. That'll just give Lucia and I a direction, and we can start looking at responses beginning of next week. And then we'll schedule a time with you and Ian to start digging into it.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Other questions or needs at this point?
Anybody? I think we're good.
All right. Well, thank you all, and have a wonderful day of learning today. And we look forward to continue supporting you. And please, 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 as you work on your individual teacher certification, if you have questions or needs or encounter a new challenge, please let us know so we can help problem solve that along the way, because we want this to be a process that is not overly laborious, but certainly one that we grow and learn from.
Sounds good.
All right. You guys have a wonderful day. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Y'all have a wonderful day.
You too.
Goodbye.
Okay, Craig?
No, it's just Lucia.
Okay, this is Virginia. I was just wanting to make sure that I covered what they needed.
Yeah, it sounded like you did a thorough job. I think that was fantastic what you did. I even learned some things.
Well, we all learn. When we stop learning, we are going to die.
Oh, yeah.
So we have a wonderful weekend, and I hope the weather's as pretty up there as it is down here.
Well, we just had that hurricane come through, so we have a lot of limbs down. I came to work anyway. I'm going to have to get to work this afternoon cleaning up the backyard. So.
Oh, well, prayers go out because we've been there down here in Houston. So, so take care and have a great weekend.
You have a great weekend too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.